So welcome everyone to the March edition of the Saddle Road Press First Sundays reading series, this time featuring Esther Cohen and Julie Benesh. Saddle Road, just briefly for those that don't know, is a literary press that's now located in Ithaca, New York. I'm Ruth Thompson. I'm the editor, and Don Mitchell, who's there somewhere, handles book design and production. We've been in business since 2011 and have published, it's coming up on 70 books now of poetry. And you can order Saddle Road books, including the two books that are going to be read from today, from any bookstore or any online bookseller. And I did want to let everybody know that although there are a couple of books still in the pipeline, we are going to be on hiatus, catching our breath in 2020. So, except for this reading series, which will continue. But other than that, we're going to kind of take a little breather. So, okay. So, welcome. I want to say welcome to Esther Cohen and Julie Benesh. Esther Cohen is the author of All of Us and many other books. And Julie Benesh is the author of Initial Conditions and a fascinating book. Esther Cohen is a writer, teacher, book doctor, and labor activist. For many years, she ran Bread and Roses, a national cultural program for workers. She started a program called Unseen America and co-founded the Kara Lemlich Awards for Women Activists. Her poem photography series with Matthew Septimus is featured in On or at On Being. She is the author of 6 books, including Breakfast with Allen Ginsberg, which is the title I wish that I had stolen. Book Don't Mind Me and Other Jewish Lies, illustrated Oz Chast. All of Us, Stories and Poems Along Route 17, is about people in a small town in upstate New York, different, even alien from one another, often politically at odds, yet managing to live in peace side by side, seen through the lens of a warm-hearted narrator with an eye for a good story and a good laugh. All of Us is a unique contribution to unique tribute to rural upstate New York, a funny Spoon River anthology, a northern relative of Eudora Welty's Why I Live at the PO. Julie Benesh grew up in Iowa and has lived in Chicago for more than 30 years. She is the recipient of an Illinois Arts Council grant, is a graduate of the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College, holds a PhD in human and organizational systems, and is currently a full professor and department chair of organizational leadership and business psychology. She teaches writing craft workshops at the Newberry Library and is currently polishing, it says here, a long anticipated short story collection called Flower Girls. So that maybe that evolved, or else it's been subsumed. Valentina Knapp wrote of Julie's poetry in Initial Conditions. Her inner scientist dances with her inner romantic, and both personas brim with lyric humanity. These poems start little revolutions with playful music and worldly insight. They are like brilliant dinner companions you hope to be seated beside, funny, original, and deeply true. I totally agree. So I'm going to turn this over to Esther and Julie.
So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. Many people on the screen, I've read your terrific books, so it's exciting to be able to be here with you today to read with Julie. And we're going to do something a little different today. Julie's going to read 2 poems. I'm going to read 2 poems. And then we're going to give you guys a prompt. And you are going to write as a way of creating an all of us on the screen today. So thank you for giving us this chance, Ruth and Don. And thank you to Saddle Road Press for publishing all of us. Thank you. Julie.
Hi, welcome everyone, and I'm really excited to be here. I think Esther and I have a mutual admiration thing going on, and I guess I get to read the first poem. Yes. All right. And I'm going to read the first poem from my collection, Initial Conditions, and Ruth had advised me to put this poem first. It's called The Infinite Comings of Age. At the open graveside of your then husband's grandfather, yourself long out of grandparents by then, your mother buried 5 years, you lift your hand, dreamily releasing the fragrance, rosemary and clove serum from your hair. And the first time that thing you thought could never happen to you were always so cautious and fearful. You're stung in the finger by a bee. And before you can say anaphylaxis, you remember that burly bookstore jock you were made to fire a decade before, when things were different, but not all that different, and how bee sting reactions get worse every time. Sensitization, though you'd think they should get less bad. Desensitization. And you're not that different either, just different enough to know how to deploy employees to more appropriate opportunities as if it were a favor. And honeybees die after just one sting, but your ex-husband will live on more or less, as will you.
Fantastic.
I
Beautiful.
didn't mention that poem is a monostic, which is one stanza and actually one sentence.
It was fantastic. Julie, can you read a second poem?
I can. I'm going to read, let's see. I love all my children, so it's always hard to decide what to read. I'm going to read, since it's Sunday, I'm going to read Remembering the Sabbath. When I get those Sunday scaries spreading dread like carbon monoxide, low barometric pressure of the soul, and I want, when I get those Sunday scaries, to avoid $1,000 worth of coral activewear, consuming an entire French silk pie, plucking bald brows, texting exes, hacking hipster bangs, innovating new martini recipes to avoid Sunday scaries. I land on Google Street View, seeking a glimmer, shimmer, trigger, ghostly, gasping greeting from the past places left unattended. That strip mall I worked at during my divorce, the condo where lightning struck like a bomb, the gym where I worked off the frozen custard from that shop with the peaked roof, imagining current constituents suffering, suppressing Sunday scaries, recreating, procreating, populating, tearing down, clearing out, shoring up, like bellows reanimating, picking up where I left off until one scary Sunday in the future, I will Google my current abandoned past, present here in anticipation of anticipating the anticipation of nostalgia, remembering the Sabbath, keeping it holy.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
So I'm going to read two poems too. I'm going to read the poem that Julie asked me to read. You know, it's always so interesting when strangers read your book and tell you what they liked and didn't like. So I'm going to read something she liked. It's
I
called-
didn't like
No,
anything
no, no,
though.
no. I know. I didn't mean to imply that she didn't like something, but I'm going to read something you especially liked. How about that?
Yes.
It's a poem called Dolores. Dolores, one of my favorite people ever, not a sufficient description. Dolores does not mind her missing body parts, thyroid, appendix, teeth, one kidney. She's okay about various diseases and all her doctors, some good looking. She looked beautiful at dinner. New silver shoes. She said, sometimes I don't feel all that good, but then I wake up to birds. She has a married lover named Ed. They can't go out to dinner because Ed has a wife, even though they live 140 miles away. Dolores said Ed is very cautious, but still, she brought Ed over for dinner at our house on a Saturday night. We all liked Ed. No one mentioned his wife. Dolores said the story with Ed and his wife is the usual story. They've lived separately for 22 years, not in the same room. She said Ed's wife believes the kids don't know, that they would be upset. The kids are in their late 40s. Dolores said they're probably living separately from their spouses, too. It's a gene. Dolores is not in love with Ed. She's been in love more than once. She met Ed at a dance. He was with a friend of his and they started talking. That's all it takes, Dolores said. She's glad about Ed because every single Friday, rain or shine, Dolores said, Ed is there at my door with flowers in his hands. I'm going to read another poem too. A lot of my poems take place in the post office. My book is a fictionalized portrait of a tiny little town in upstate New York, based on the tiny little town in upstate New York where I live. I live in the summer. This is called Irene at the Post Office. And afterwards, everybody always asks me, is this story true? And I want to tell you that it is true, just in case you're wondering while I'm reading. You won't believe this, Irene often begins. She is 81, and we always believe her. She restates when necessary for absolute emphasis. Last night, she said, I went out with a new man named Jim, and he offered to pay. But I said, no, you don't have to pay for me. I'm a working girl. And we went to dinner at that nice new place in Albany, all the way on the other side of town. Afterwards, when we got home, Jim said, let me come inside. She told all of us in the post office, hanging on for more. No way, I said. This is date number one. A girl's got her rules. Three, she said. Three's your lucky number. So Julie and I decided that today we're going to give you guys a prompt to write now. And your prompt is what I remember. And you're going to have 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes to write. And then those of you who want to read will read. So we get to hear some of the illustrious writers in this room read what you write today. So nobody has to read. I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, yeah, I have to read. But we've got a lot of illustrious writers here. So it would be nice to hear from some of you. So raise your hand if you want to read what you wrote. Okay, Don Menge.
Okay. Um, uh, this just came to me. What I remember is seeing my dad after years of not talking. after I introduced my husband to him. He was smaller than I expected. He'd lost teeth and his glasses were askew on his face. I wanted to straighten them, but when I approached, his body language said no. When we parted, we shook hands, and $200 were whisked by the wind, up and around. We scrambled to nab them, 10 20s floating here and there, like melancholy butterflies.
Beautiful. Thank you, Don. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Who would like to read next? The Don number 1 and 2. The other Don.
We'll do the double downs.
Double Don.
Yeah. What I remember is the not remembering. At the PR, I remember not being able to remember my box number, and I had to ask what's her name what it was. She said, "Don't you remember?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Tonight's number 3." And I said, "Number 3?" And she said, your lucky number." And I said, "My lucky number is 64 or 32 or maybe 128, but definitely not 3." And after that, she punched me, but I don't remember why.
That was perfect. Perfect.
Well, it's all due to you.
Well, you wrote it though. That was perfect. Thank you, Don. Thank you. Who else would? Yeah, Ruth.
Okay.
Ruth, tell us the title of your last book so everybody can read it.
I don't have it here, but it's Journey Bread. And it's actually not published by Saddle Road Press. It's published by Broadstone Books, but it should be available.
And it's gorgeous.
I can find it. Hold on 1 second. I was just reading the other day, so I have pages in it, but oops. Sorry, I forgot I had a weird background here. It's the
Okay.
background of my book. There's my book and there's the background of my book. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At my age, there's almost nothing except what I remember. Not why I came downstairs, but the smell of Lisbon, for example, when I was 11, stepping out onto the rainy pavement, roasting coffee beans and spices and trees, maybe they were linden trees, filling the air, and the pastel buildings stacked against the hillside, and the flowers, smelling that complex of grown-up odors, and later the smell of hot sun on the bright, unsalty sea. I knew the smell of Pacific brine, but this was different, and that's as far as I got.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you, Ruth. Who else would like to read? Brina Clark.
What I remember is hardly the question. What don't I remember? My mother said, "I've forgotten more than you've learned." I bristled then. I was 10 or so and was trying to be a know-it-all. I know now what she was saying. I have forgotten, happily. And I remember in remarkably splendid and intricate ways, and often I can cough up an answer on Jeopardy from so far down in my memory, it shocks me. I just belch it up and it delights me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Brina. Who else? Diane. You're muted, Diane. You're muted.
Okay. What I remember when my friend says, "But we knew we were hurt," was bewilderment. Snow White watching the huntsman disappear into the thick, dark wood, shaking his head, and no dwarfs, not even a rabbit or a squirrel, anywhere in sight.
Thank you. Beautiful. Not even a rabbit or a squirrel.
No.
Thank you. Who else can read to us?
I can read.
Good. Great.
I'll start now. The first time I knew such a gesture could exist, I was 5 years old, and I had a little boyfriend in kindergarten. We played together during recess. He wanted to go on the seesaw. I don't believe I ever had been on a seesaw before, and we took a few up and down turns, but I got bored, and I didn't feel like tottering up and down for the rest of recess, so I got off. Of course, when I had gotten off, the poor fellow was still in the air, and he came crashing down to the concrete. In shock, he cried and yelped, and our teacher rushed over to see if he was all right. He was, fortunately, all right, probably more scared and shocked than hurt, and she calmed him, then turned to me. "Louise," she said, and I suspected even then that I was going to get called out. But what she said to me was this: "Louise, I know you are a good little girl, and you didn't mean to hurt your friend. But the next time you go on a seesaw, please remember to have that you both need to have your feet on the ground before you get off. You can remember that, can't you, Louise? Because I know you are a good little girl. You didn't mean to hurt anyone, and it's just something you have to learn." It was the first time I knew such wisdom and kindness could exist, and I have never forgotten it since, even though I've forgotten her name.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you, Louise. Who else can read to us? Who else would like to read to us? Yes. Yeah, Dane.
Dane, yes, hi. The first thing that came to mind was my parents. I'm old, and yet they're in my mind a lot. This was up in near Yosemite, in the mountains where they live. But I remember when my mother called at midnight, my father was already dead, found peacefully laid out, hands clasped over his chest on the unfinished second floor of the hexagon he was building for her, as though offering her another life, unfinished.
Wow. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Who else? Who else here can read, would like to read?
This is Donna Gross. I'll read.
Fantastic. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Esther. What I remember about Michael Brown riding on the back of his motorcycle, holding on tight to his middle. I loved wrapping my arms around him, this handsome, sexy guy with an athletic build. And he was a gentleman. It was thrilling as he gained more speed and moved onto the highway. I remember there was anxiety, thinking about how unsafe it was on a motorcycle, but didn't let it get in the way of the feeling of exhilaration of the wind and the smell of the air and the vibe of the motorcycle that could register on the seismograph. I need to remember to think of that moment more often and of the meal we shared at the microbiotic restaurant when we finally reached our destination.
That was such a nice memory. Thank you, Donna. Is there anybody else who would like to read, who hasn't read yet? So we're going to do, Julie and I are each going to read two more poems. Julie's going to read two now, then I'll read two, and then we'll have one last prompt. Julie, can you read two poems?
I can read two poems. Thank you. This is The Constancy of Forgetting. When I wake up and nothing hurts, or something hurts in a soft way, like a shin twinge, radiating, muscular, reminding me I can still break and come back stronger, or even when a small discomfort comforts, dry mouth, a rumble of hunger, or tingle of neuropathy, the civil defense sirens silent, the sad trombones and tiny violins mute as sleep. I remember how I love when the weather forecast is wrong in either direction, and how I thought physical therapy was for the sedentary, and then it cured my pain. And while there may be no food in the fridge, there is food at the store my phone will pay for with my job stress. I'm a good provider. My silverfish are living their best lives, feasting and weaving like wedding guests in a painting by Bruegel, while the cats pose decorative as Instagram billionairesses. I have a panoply of invisible subscriptions that no doubt keep the global economy afloat. Also, nothing's burning or even smells bad in my house or my fleshly abode. So much given and chosen and dreamed and unimaginable. The unlikelihood of any of us waking up ever at all, let alone here and now together in the careless flip of a blank new day, like no other, and so many others. It's true, there are fates worse than cliches.
Nice, very nice.
Okay, I'm just looking for the next one. This is just a very place oriented one. So at Lynn Junction. My father built the cabin by the river himself and built me a tree house on the riverbank and two kinds of swings, one with a tire you sit on and one to hang on upright. We found a wounded duckling near the pond and nursed it back to health. I scraped my sternum raw on the styrofoam boogie board, shot arrows, and played a game with darts, now outlawed. Relieved myself in a bucket or an outhouse. It was not a good place for menses with no running water due to a burst pipe never fixed, but the meals outstanding. Barbecue on charcoal or wood, my parents doused with gasoline and threw a match at. We ate prime steaks. My mother made cheese sauce on the electric stove to top the baked potatoes with salad and corn from our garden up the hill. We had a fishing boat we take out to camp on sandbars, and my father would seine for minnows and release armadas of crawdads. He planted hundreds of trees by hand on that 1 acre and fed dozens of cats. The neighbor's dog used to carry them around in his mouth, gently, a form of recreation for each party. My parents wanted to build their dream home there, and I don't remember when I realized that railroad bridge Dad put 100 sparklers on for 4th of July, the one with the walkway added when that boy and girl jumped to their death to avoid the train, would become a highway over the river connecting two sides of the city.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to read a little bit too. This is called Neighbors Who Fall in Love with Each Other. You can see that my work has a certain theme here. There's something sexy in a high school way about neighbors. That's why I've heard this story. maybe 1,000 times. Martha told it today at the post office. A famous artist with a wife and 5 sons, every single son a drummer, not even one bass guitarist. He fell in love with his directly across the street neighbor, a married choreographer with 2 children of her own. They ran away. They are both actually marathon runners. They ran away to another small town just 3 miles away from here. Will they both fall in love with neighbors again? And this is another poem called What I Want to Tell You. What I want to tell you is this. Some places, not big history cities like Rome, Athens, Delhi, Nairobi, Machu Picchu, places requiring tourist offices and maps. Some places, mostly obscure villages, small, as easy to recognize as love. My childhood in an ordinary house painted brown, just a few maple trees. For years, I didn't see full, fragrant anything else. For years, I saw logic and what passes for order, what real life was supposed to be. And then I went by myself to a small village in Greece with a whitewashed monastery. I walked up a dirt path, cypress trees, into a room so beautiful I knew I'd never seen beauty before. Strong, deep scent. What was it? I still don't know. Exactly the way you feel when somebody touches you and you know you've never really been touched before. What you want is to be touched like that again and again and again. This place, an imperfect village, some people don't like each other, don't have enough money, too many kids, a cult came and so did a flood, trees fall, the economy is difficult. Still, I am not romanticizing when I tell you, I want to tell you this. I want you to know so you'll maybe be able to recognize some places of unimaginable beauty, not pretty flowers in a glass jar, good beauty, nothing fleeting, nothing occasional. This place is where what you suspected all along can actually happen. Bright red dreams. Bright red dreams. Thank you. So I would like everybody here to and Julie would like it too, to write a goodbye to one another. I want to say that um, we live in such a difficult time. This isn't news. It's been really hard for all of us, and having the opportunity to hear everybody's beautiful prose makes things a little better. They make things a little better. So thank you all for sharing what you wrote with us. And let's all write one last sentence, one more sentence. You can pick the subject. One sentence more. Okay, does everybody have your sentence? It would be nice to hear a sentence from everybody who wants to read them. So I'm going to go down my screen and call on you. And if you don't want to read, you don't have to. Let's start with Barbara. Barbara.
Thank you, Esther, for your beautiful poems and prompts. And thank you, Julie, for your beautiful poems, especially the pain poem that my friend in pain would love to hear. And thank you, Ruth and Don, for everything. And to all you beautiful writers, I feel so lucky to have shared this time with you.
That was such a fantastic sentence, Barbara. Thank you. Brina Clark.
Yep.
I'm just going to read down my screen. Brina?
Okay. I'd like to die after I've been swimming so that my last sensation is deep and pleasurable.
Wow, that's so nice. Thank you, Brina. Robin Hunt.
I will forever endeavor to sit absolutely still.
I will forever endeavor to sit absolutely still. Thank you, Robin. Louise.
Watch the Americas tonight on NBC, an exquisitely beautiful photographic record of our natural world, which will remind you of why we're here.
Thank you, Louise. Donna Gross.
Thank you, everyone, for each being who you are.
Thank you, Donna. Edie.
I just love listening to all your different voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. Betty. Betty, are you muted?
Sorry. Coming together, bonding, remembering, touched by the other.
Touched by the other. Thank you, Betty. Diane.
Don't go far. Stay where I can see you.
Go far. Stay where I can see you.
See you.
That's a really nice title, Diane. Don't go far. Stay where I can
I
see
can
you.
see you.
Thank you. Don Mitchell.
Sorry. I'll see you all again tomorrow when I edit this again and again, again, and again.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Peter Onabashian.
You can't hear me because there'll be feedback, but I hope for grace and kindness in this difficult time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rainey's muted.
Hi. An extraordinary respite in an otherwise mundane day.
Thank you, Rainey. Extraordinary respite in an otherwise mundane day. Thank you. David.
Mine is connecting with soulful people brings gratitude.
Connecting with soulful people brings gratitude. Thank you. Keith, you didn't have a chance in the beginning to tell everybody about your beautiful book. Can you tell everybody for a second?
Well, I was speaking of gratitude, so grateful to Ruth and Don and Saddle Road Press for helping me put together my collection. Let's see, I should have a copy here somewhere. Yeah. All that names us, and really has been a wonderful experience to have that and to share it. So I'm
Great.
very, very grateful for that. This is my sort of goodbye sentence, but I'm cheating. I wrote it at 1 o'clock this morning. I was saying goodbye to a friend that I found out yesterday had died, that I had only just heard about it. So I was writing a goodbye to him last night, someone I knew from high school. And I'll just read this one sentence out of that. I never told you how much you mattered. I think I would have if I'd gone out on the water with you, restitching lives as the wake spreads behind us, navigating the slow bends through bald cypresses, trailing moss, and open marshlands into the end of the day.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Beautiful. It's awful to lose a friend. Awful. Tanya, you didn't tell us about your beautiful book. Can you tell everybody?
Yeah, I'm going to read in the fall, I think, from The Fool and the Corn. Thank you, Ruth and Dawn. Yeah, so I'm excited to read later. It's beautiful to be with all of you today. And my sentence, do I get to read that?
Yeah.
My goodbye is a hello, the heart in my body as I rode my bike, and the heart in the egret flying on the other side of the hedge beat connected in the same path of air, just like our hearts in this room.
Just like our hearts in the room. Beautiful. Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to ask Dane. Dane?
Yes, like others too, I want to give thanks for Saddle Road, and you can find my new book, Deep Travel, at Home in the Burning World on the site. But the last line for today is simply, this seems less goodbye, more hello.
Less goodbye, more hello. Beautiful. Julie, will you read us one more poem?
I'm going to read a poem after Tony Hoagland's The Color of the Sky, and it's called The Color of My Eyes. Freezing today, and I'm a little numb, looking out the window at billows of steam that keep my body warm, but not so much the rest. I have a to-do list, but it's not written down. And I'm not the type to write things down for the mere satisfaction of crossing them off. I'd rather make a not-do list, but oh boy, that'd take a while. Some say winter is not, contrary to popular belief, the season of repose, that under the snow is a gathering, even an orgy. I see portents everywhere these days. That close tomorrow sign on the bank promising a more intimate future, or at least a gesture toward solvency. My dreams combine times and places, even people of my past, like a film poorly adapted from a dog-eared novel, leading me to believe what I thought was a window might be a painting, or more likely, a foggy mirror. I mean to say, I'm a part of nature, so nothing if not eternally hopeful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Julie. So we've got a few minutes left. Does anybody here have any questions of Julie or me or Ruth or John before we leave? Yes, Barbara.
Julie, I was wondering if the pain poem you read and the winter poem that you just read, if they're in one of your collections, because I have a friend who is struggling with pain in winter in a big bad way, and I would like to share them with her.
Yeah, yes, they are both in Initial Conditions, published by Saddle Road Press.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any, yes, Robin.
I've wanted to ask you all the time that I've had your book by my bedside, Esther, if the people in your community have copies of your book and they come up and say, are you going to write about me? Did you write about me? Is that me? I've been wanting to ask you that. This is my opportunity.
That's a very good question. You know, first of all, my book is fiction, number one. And number two, yes, my community is very tiny. And I've done a lot of these readings and writings in that area. And people come over and say, are you talking about blah, 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 blah. The woman in the post office was thrilled. I will tell you that. Her name's not Irene. She was thrilled. And she sent a copy of my, not the book, but the poem to Jim, the guy who I call Jim. So yes, they
I
do.
hope that was all true. It's a delightful book.
Yes. Anybody else have any questions or comments or no? So thank you. Thank you, Don and Ruth and Saddle Road and Julie, such a wonderful writer, and all of you who came here on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of this crazy world to hear beautiful people reading. Thank you.
And I wanted to say one last, I was saving my goodbye to say goodbye to them. So I've been ending every Zoom for a month or two, more than a month or two now, with these words, and it really gave me a thrill that Esther, you wrote a poem using the same words this morning. The way I try to end everything is remember that joy is radical resistance.